We all been hearing a lot of bad things about Kawhi Leonard lately, more bad than good. But, Kawhi's still a great player, and he's still one of the top players in the league when healthy. And there's no doubt about that. I just think it's just a bad misfortune where, what's going on with Kawhi right now and his outside life is definitely another misfortune as well. But either way, Kawhi is still one of the top players in the league. And I think a lot of people need to put respect on his name because he is a two-time champion. He's gave this league something to cheer for. He's gave this league ratings. He's gave this league a lot of his years, even though a lot of people might not think it was the most productive of his years. But he's given the league championships within the time that he's been on the floor, which has been very limited from what you hear from a lot of analysts and people like that who speak on Kawhi Leonard. But all the limitations and everything that they speak about, Kawhi Leonard still has 2 championships out of that. But here lately, there's been some news and some reports coming from Skip Bayless on his own personal show where he speaks about the possibility of a Kawhi Leonard trade and Kawhi Leonard asking for a trade, because he speaks on the fact that you can actually YouTube it yourself if you want to, but he speaks on the fact that Kawhi Leonard is in his camp, on his side. He's hearing that Kawhi Leonard felt like he was done wrong by the organization, pushed back a little bit too soon to help this team win just because they were reeling and, they weren't playing up to expectation, at the time. Because I think he was out for like about 14 games earlier in the season or something like that. And they were kind of like a hit or miss Jekyll and Hyde team, basically, or that's probably what they were going to be going forward. And, they tried to rush Kawhi back based upon what Skip Bayless sources told him. And Skip Bayless has some pretty credible sources. Usually when he says something, a lot of times it does turn out that way. When he said a year ago or a year or two ago when Kawhi wasn't coming back in the playoffs and everybody thought he would, after that injury he had against Utah. And Skip was saying the whole time his sources say he wasn't coming back and Kawhi never came back. His sources said years ago that Kawhi he was going to ask for a trade from the San Antonio Spurs before it actually even happened, and or right around the time it did happen, and his sources came up good then. So now Skip Bayless is saying that there's a possibility that Kawhi Leonard might ask for a trade from the Clippers because his camp, from what he's hearing, is not pleased with how Kawhi's injury was done and being played out. So it's one of those situations where, we don't know what's going to come out of the situation with Kawhi Leonard and this whole thing. But, it doesn't look good for everybody. The Clippers have been together here for about 4 or 5 seasons now. No championship has come out of it. And, there's been more injuries than actually players being on the floor. And it'd be one thing, like if Kawhi and PG played these games and, they just lost some series because they had some misfortunes and they, didn't find their way. But we never even actually seen them actually put this whole operation together and see what Kawhi and PG would look like together, for long periods of time, stretches of time throughout the season and in the postseason. It's always been one has been missing or both has been missing. And that's just not good enough, And Kawhi noticed a failure. And PG knows a failure, and so does the whole Clippers organization. But you got to move on, and you got to be able to keep the pieces together as much as you can to try to make another run at it if that's what's going to happen. But I've said before, I wouldn't be surprised if Kawhi Leonard didn't come back to the Clippers, after, this season. Because like I said, this be 4 years they've been together and nothing came out of the situation. And, if Kawhi is unhappy with anything of how he's being done, of the reports that's out there and what Skip Bayless has put out there from his sources, if this is true, then it's done for the Clippers, because Kawhi definitely, asked for a trade and move on. And I'm pretty sure some Clippers fans will be happy if Kawhi moves on, because they just think that Kawhi is never going to stay healthy enough to get him a championship. But what they have to realize is nobody has been healthy enough to get the Clippers a championship. Not Chris Paul, not Blake Griffin, not Kawhi Leonard, not PG. It's always been like that. You see what I'm saying? So it's like it's just one of those things. I don't know. I don't believe in a curse, but it must just be a coincidence. Who knows? But health has been this team's issue since they've been together. And other Clippers teams, it was the same thing. So I don't know what's going on. But at the same time, it's just not equating to winning. And me personally, I don't know if Kawhi will. I can see Kawhi running it back another year with the Clippers, but I can also possibly see a scenario where he doesn't, because if this is true from Skip Bayless, who has credible sources, who's been known to give some, good insight on situations before we possibly even knew about it, then, I mean, it's a possibility Kawhi Leonard might not come back to this team. It's a possibility, Kawhi might let this go and, try to, take his business elsewhere. I don't know where else he would go, but I mean, regardless, if that's what he wants to do, I'm pretty sure while his stock is still high, teams will definitely still take him. I mean, and like I said, Kawhi is one of those top players in the league. When you have him on your team, you definitely have a chance to win. And, like I said, there was a situation like this in San Antonio years ago where Kawhi didn't like the way the medical staff did him and the way they treated him with his torn quadriceps at the time back then. And the team turned against him the way they did. Kawhi took his bags and left. And I don't want it to be the same type of situation with the Clippers, but at the same time, if Kawhi's looking around, looking at everything, he probably also what Skip Bayless was saying, that there was some people out of his camp saying that they don't like the way the Clippers handled, Kawhi Leonard's situation in regards to the media. The media is saying all these things about Kawhi like he didn't like he was faking an injury or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And the Clippers organization didn't stick up for their guy the way they should have. That's another report coming out of Kawhi's camp that I think is very huge. And if that's true, like I said, Kawhi is one of the type of people, from what I've seen in his NBA career, he forgives, but he doesn't forget. And when he gets an opportunity to take his talents elsewhere or has his mind set on something, that's what he does. It doesn't matter what nobody else thinks. He goes after what he does and lives his life the way he wants to, which I definitely respect that. But at the same time, for Clippers fans, it's not going to be good if he do leave, even though you might not care whether he leaves or not. But, it's like, where do you go from there? If Kawhi leaves, if PG leaves, it's like if they walk for some reason, because they got that 2-year player option where they can walk from the team. It really doesn't even have to be a trade from what I understand. It could be some different stipulations in the clause there. But either way, if Kawhi asked for a trade, they would do it regardless. It doesn't matter what nobody says. So it would be a troubling situation, because you wouldn't want to open up the Intuit Dome, the new building, Steve Ballmer, all the money you put into it, with a bunch of young players like Terrence Mann and all these good little pieces, and don't have no superstardom on your team so you can compete for championships. Even though Kawhi and PG is unhealthy, but you got to look at it like this. You would not be a championship contender without their name on the roster, without a jersey with their name on the back of it. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, you got to look at that too. I mean, I know the frustration is high, but at the same time, you got to weigh the situation out and put the balance in there. Without Kawhi and PG, tickets are not going to sell as much. The team is not going to be praised. They'll just be the LA team that's in LA with no future going forward in regards to winning championships. So it's like, you can play that game, but it's like playing Russian roulette with that. You see what I'm saying? So it's a very tough situation to be in, and I definitely understand. But hopefully Kawhi comes back strong and healthy, regardless of all the naysayers and everything towards this guy, because he is a great player, always has been a great player, and always will be. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely think it's a great possibility for him to come back. But if he does require or ask for a trade, I wouldn't be surprised at this point, because like I said, the operation hasn't worked in all this time. So it's like, a lot of the pieces of the Clippers might not be there next year. The little pieces that you might like, or that you might look at, the Terrence Manns and and some of these other pieces they might acquire, they might look like a different roster next year. You see what I'm saying? So if that's the case, then the championship window of the depth and all the stuff they had this season might be different. And if the Clippers have less depth, that means it's more on Kawhi and PG, more onus on them to score and be available and be on the floor more, because they don't have as much depth if they let go of some of those pieces, or they can't keep them in order for the Clippers to be a dangerous team. So a lot has to go right for the Clippers this offseason, but we'll see what happens. But it's definitely not good news to hear any star player like Kawhi Leonard, possibly asking for a trade or anything like that, or maybe the Clippers might trade him. Who knows? But honestly, I think the way it's going now, the Clippers might definitely need it might be a situation where they might need more a different look. You know what I'm saying? And that's the case. You never know what might happen. But either way, we're going to stay tuned in and see how it pans out for them in this offseason, and what moves they're going to make, or if they're going to stand still and keep everybody put and try to make another run. But it's going to be an interesting offseason for them. And definitely it's going to be an interesting next season for them, depending on, who's there and what pieces they move around or what pieces they keep.